I'm Dr. Vanita Rattan. I'm a doctor, but I'm also a cosmetic formulator specifically for skin of color. So today's video is such an exciting one. For me, I've always made my own skincare because my main concerns have always been anti-aging and anti-pigmentation. I'm prone to melasma, which is why I created the facial kit for pigmentation for skin of color. But then actually I needed to create the full line for my own face, and that was everything from the Micellar Gel Wash, the Double Cleanse, the Hydrating Toner, the Brightening Toner, the Exfoliator, Chemical Exfoliator, which was safe for skin of color, then the Antioxidant Serum, which I wanted in an airless pump using the correct percentages for skin of color, then the Ceramide Peptide Moisturiser for anti-aging, and of course Inzincable, which now is available to the world. And for a long time, this was just my skincare routine that I made in my laboratory for my own face. And then in one of my videos, I mentioned Cera-Pep, and I just read hundreds of comments underneath saying, Dr. V, what's this Cera-Pep? We want access to Cera-Pep. So I thought, I went back to you, which I always do, and I asked you, do you want me to make you my daily range that I make for my face, you know, for somebody who's after 20 years old, where anti-aging and anti-pigmentation or brightening are your main concerns? And it was just an overwhelming yes. And so I decided to do that for you. So I would like to discuss, first of all, what it is, the ingredients that are in it, the percentages, and why I think it's great for skin of color and why I decided to make it. If that sounds good to you, give me a thumbs up. Let's dive right in. So first question is, number one, does skin of color really need its own skincare? And the answer for me would be yes. The reason being that skin of color burns quickly and hyperpigments quickly. So for us, I always say one scratch, one bite, or one burn, and we pigment. That means that our skincare really has to be safer. And so I always say try and avoid denatured alcohol, fragrance, or essential oils as the bare minimum in your skincare. Even that's difficult to do because those three ingredients tend to be in the vast majority of skincare, which is why, you know, this whole channel exists, is to tell you which products are ideal for skin of color and which ones maybe to sidestep. In addition, skin of color tends to have less ceramides than Caucasian skin, which means it tends to lead to drier, duller skin, especially as we age. So if you were to create the perfect skincare regime for skin of color, this is what I would recommend. I'd recommend that had no irritating ingredients in them. They'd be safe. That means no denatured alcohol, no fragrance, no essential oils. I would want to have ceramides in them because skin of color has less ceramides than Caucasian skin. I would want you to use tyrosinase inhibitors. Those are the ingredients that slow down the rate of pigmentation that because we are prone to hyperpigmentation, especially on the cheeks, i.e. melasma. And 4, I would want you to use anti-inflammatories because any form of inflammation can lead to pigmentation. Pigmentation really is our number one cause of concern. We actually age pretty well. Wrinkles, you know, are not our first concern. It does tend to be pigmentation. So that doesn't tend to be the focus for products designed for Caucasian skin. So for me, the ideal skincare range would encompass all those benefits. The other question I get asked is, Dr. V, how do I know that I have skin of color? I'm quite fair, or I'm from the Mediterranean. There's a very simple rule of thumb. If you are more likely to tan rather than burn in the sun, then you're likely to have skin of color. And actually having skin of color is different to the definition of people of color. Skin of color is if you're more likely to tan, your melanocytes are larger and they are easier to trigger. And that is why we hyperpigment so quickly. Now, the key actives that I would look for in a daily range for skin of color would start off with these tyrosinase inhibitors. Retinol palmitate, which is the least irritating form of vitamin A and one that I'm happy for you to use every night. Tetrahexyl decaloscorbate, my favorite form of vitamin C because it's fat soluble. It goes into the dermis to stimulate collagen. Tocopherol acetate, i.e. your vitamin E, licorice root extract, and niacinamide. These are my top 5 tyrosinase inhibitors that I'd be happy for you to use on a daily basis. When it comes to exfoliating acids, the 2 that I love for skin of color are obviously mandelic acid and lactic acid. I tend to avoid glycolic acid at 5% plus. So if you do want to use glycolic acid, I would tend to stick at the 2% range. You would only use salicylic acid if you had oily, acne-prone skin, but this range that I'm making was for my skin type, which is aging and pigmentation, and tends to dry as we age. So actually salicylic acid isn't something that I would put into my skincare routine. The anti-inflammatories that I love are panthenol, allantoin, silicones, and Centella asiatica. The collagen restorers, so the ingredients that go into the dermis to stimulate collagen, would be tetrahexyl decaloscorbate, which I've already discussed as one of the tyrosinase inhibitors, and peptides. And then some of my favorite humectants would be ceramides, urea, and glycerin. These are the water magnets that hold water in the top layer of skin, so it plumps up the skin and gives you more of a flawless finish, so that when light bounces off of it, you have an even reflection of light, which makes the skin appear smoother and younger. For me, it's easier for me to just purchase somebody else's line that's already been made, but actually there was no range with all these ingredients at the correct percentages for skin of color. And so I decided to make it for myself, and I basically took it up a notch because I added a technology called DermStim, which is a stem cell vitamin technology that goes into the dermis to stimulate collagen and also to help reduce hyperpigmentation. Because for me, melasma is something that I am constantly aware of and almost need to be constantly managing because it's a chronic condition. Before I go into the products of the Dr. Vanita Rattan range, I did want to just discuss the classic mistakes that I see being made to make sure that you're not making those mistakes. So the number one mistake is over washing. So using face washes or soaps that are too harsh for the skin and literally strip the skin of fats. So what ends up happening is the skin feels tight, dry, there's increased water loss from the skin, transepidermal water loss, and now you have dull, sensitive skin. So it's one of the worst things you can do, and it's the most common thing that happens because actually we don't really get taught how to wash our skin. From a young age, you know, you tend to just use whatever's on the bathroom counter and feel like that tight feeling's how it's supposed to feel. That's not how your skin is supposed to feel after you wash it. Your skin should feel soft and supple. The second mistake I see being made is people not double cleansing at night. And the reason this is important is because during the day, especially right now, I'm wearing makeup, I've got sunscreen on, and I need to really melt this off my face with an oil-based cleanser first, and then go in with the Micellar Gel Wash. If I went in just with Micellar Gel Wash, this oil-based sunscreen and makeup is not going to come off. So double cleansing really is important because otherwise you don't get good penetration of active ingredients with the serums you want to put on later. So the most important thing is, first of all, to start with a clean skin. Now, the common mistake I see with toners is the squeaky clean feeling that you get from them, and that's because of denatured alcohol. This kind of stripping of the skin, people think that they're getting rid of the oil slick, say for example if you have oily skin, but actually all you're doing is you're stimulating further oil production. It's just not a good idea. The purpose of a toner is to remove any remnants of dirt or makeup from the skin, but also don't forget toners have a high water content. That means that we're able to actually dissolve quite a high percentage of actives. So this is a great time to be applying your toner with skin brighteners, with your tyrosinase inhibitors, and with your anti-aging ingredients. The mistake I see being made with exfoliation is physical scrubs. So the vast majority of face exfoliants are physical scrubs, but this can lead to micro tears. And basically when you're ripping off that top layer of skin, you're not just removing dead skin cells, it's not even. So this can lead to irritation and sensitivity, and then if you put any actives onto the skin, it can damage the skin barrier. So I'm really not a fan of physical scrubs for skin of color. I tend to say stick with chemical exfoliants. So lactic and mandelic are my two favorite. With glycolic, if you do want to use it, just make sure it's a low percentage, otherwise it can burn the skin and lead to more pigmentation. Now, the classic mistakes I see being made with moisturizers is that people use lotions. Now, lotions basically have a high water content and that will evaporate quickly. And this is why when you wear a lotion, instantly your skin feels hydrated, but within an hour, your skin is starting to feel tight and dry. And this is not what we want, especially as we age and our skin is already drier. We already have less water magnets in our skin. So we actually need to have a thicker moisturizer, which is what I did with Cera-Pep, is I want to create a luxury moisturizer, but with no fragrance. What you'll also find is the majority of luxury skincare does have fragrance in it, which I just would never recommend, because the number one cause of contact dermatitis is fragrance. And for skin of color, when we get dermatitis, that's just inflammation of the skin. It can lead to pigmentation, which can be there for years. So I would just always steer clear of any fragrance in any of your skincare. The mistake I see being made with antioxidant serums is that they're not in airless pumps. So this was key. I wanted to create an airless pump that had no light getting through. And it was the only way to ensure that the antioxidants inside were still stable. So I've seen some very expensive antioxidant serums that are in pipettes where oxygen is sitting in there and oxidizing the antioxidants, and you know, it's a bit of a waste of time and money. So that was really key. The other mistake people make with antioxidants is that they must always be in combination to stabilize them. Having a single antioxidant is not going to be as potent as having a group of antioxidants. And then finally, the final step during the day is, of course, your sunscreen. So for me, I wanted a mineral-based sunscreen because chemical sunscreens do get into your blood, into your urine and breast milk, which is why we recommend mineral sunscreens to pregnant ladies. But I also wanted a sunscreen which would reduce my pigmentation throughout the day. So I added a technology called Melashield, which is a UV stable tyrosinase inhibitor. And we did a clinical study on 51 candidates with skin of color, and 73% of them saw a reduction in pigmentation just from switching from their regular SPF50 to Inzincable. So this really was key for me, was to create a SPF50 with maximum UVA protection, 4+, no white cast, and be able to reduce pigmentation throughout the day. So that one I think took me the longest to create, but has been launched for you, and I'm so happy with the reviews you've given. Alright, so that's enough of that. So I wanted to talk to you about the Dr. Vanita Rattan range. What is it? What are the ingredients? How does it work? So let's start off with the Micellar Gel Wash. The key for me here was to make sure it was hydrating, and so my skin felt supple afterwards, and brightening. So the way I did this was with these key ingredients. I added anti-inflammatories, Centella asiatica, I added allantoin and panthenol. For the brightening ingredients, I added niacinamide and your vitamin E. And for the humectant, I added glycerin. And of course, I added the technology DermStim to stimulate collagen. So for my AM routine, I would start off with the Micellar Gel Wash, and then I would use our Cera-Pep moisturizer. So the key ingredients here were ceramides, peptides, and of course tyrosinase inhibitors. I used a combination of licorice root and niacinamide. I of course added anti-inflammatory panthenol and the humectant glycerin and DermStim, which I think it really is key, because for me, collagen stimulation is something we can't underestimate. We reduce our ability to produce collagen from the age of 21 onwards. We produce 1% less every year. And so for skin of color, by the end of our 20s is actually when we start to notice fine lines. And really by the end of our 30s, we may have static lines. So those are lines that are there continuously. So actually from 21 onwards, we really want to be doing what we can to minimize free radicals that damage collagen, which is why we use antioxidant serums, but also want to stimulate collagen directly. And in the morning, after I've worn my Cera-Pep, I'll just wear my Inzincable, and that will basically be it for the day. When I get back from work, I will double cleanse my face. So our oil melting cleanser has jojoba oil, triglycerides, and vitamin E. These are all non-pore clogging ingredients, which are important. So what I tend to do is I massage it into my skin for about 10 to 15 seconds. Then I use a wet sponge to gently remove any makeup. Try and be as gentle as you can, especially around the eye area. And this is why we say don't use makeup wipes. We want you really to melt all the makeup away without it irritating and tugging on the skin. After the oil melting cleanser, we then go in with a micellar gel wash, which I've just discussed. I think one of the ingredients I definitely want to include in this was 2% niacinamide. And the reason being that not for sebum control, but actually to repair the skin barrier. There are many benefits when it comes to niacinamide. We often talk about it in terms of acne, but actually for any form of skin sensitivity, erythema, redness, rosacea, it is great for that, in addition to the brightening effects of it, which is why I thought it was key to use it at 2%, which is where all the clinical studies are based at, and specifically for skin of color. Next, I go in with my super hydrating toner. Now, the key here is obviously to remove any excess makeup, but also to soothe the skin and to add any higher percentage actives that I want to do. So for me, I would start off with anti-inflammatories. So my three favorite are Centella asiatica, panthenol, and allantoin. The brightening agent I used was niacinamide. The humectant I used was glycerin, which is the water magnet to hold water in that top layer of skin, especially after you've washed your skin. And then of course I added Dermstim. So that is to go into the dermis to stimulate the collagen. Now moving on to my chemical exfoliator called Exfoliate to Glow. I use 5% mandelic acid plus 5% lactic acid. But the key here really is the humectant and the anti-inflammatories. So I use Centella asiatica and glycerin. Glycerin I used at 7%, which is quite high. And the reason is because using 10% AHA, even if they're large molecules, as you know, mandelic acid is the largest AHA molecule and lactic acid is a hydrating AHA. I still want to minimize any irritation because they're still quite high percentages. And so the best way to do that is, of course, to use anti-inflammatories, but also to use these water magnets. Now, the benefits of chemical exfoliation is that you get even brightening of the skin. It just removes the dead top layer of skin. It doesn't affect your living skin cells. So you don't get those micro tears that you get from physical scrubs. So immediately your skin will look brighter, but also you have much better penetration of actives. And that's why at this point, I would then use our antioxidant power serum. Now, the antioxidants I choose to use on a daily basis are retinol palmitate, that's your vitamin A. I know some of you are going to ask, but Dr. V, what about retinol? Retinol is an alcohol and is quite irritating. I wouldn't recommend using retinol every single day. So I'd be happy for you to use your retinol 2 to 3 times a week, but this is for the daily range. So your antioxidant serum I'd use is retinol palmitate, followed by your tetrahexyl decaloscorbate. That's the only fat-soluble vitamin C that can go into the dermis to stimulate collagen. It is an expensive ingredient, which is why you don't tend to find it in a lot of over-the-counter products. But when I formulated this whole line, it was for my own face. And so, you know, you don't really think about price. The third thing is your vitamin E, plus your coenzyme Q10, and of course, silicones to smooth out those wrinkles. I would then top my face up with my Cera-Pep moisturizer. And in the morning, my face always feels supple. And that's important because, especially here, we have the central heating on, or as you can see, the air conditioning on. And so your face tends to become quite dry because water is constantly evaporating. And we have less ceramides, less humectants in our skin as we age. And so it was very important for me to make sure that I have the right amount of occlusives to humectants in my whole skincare range so that when I woke up in the morning, my skin felt young. So I'm so excited that we are going to start pre-selling the Dr. Vanita Rattan range from mid-September 2021 onwards. For dispatch a couple of months later. So if that's something you're interested in, you can head over and look at the link, which is skincarebydrv.com. I did try to formulate it as cost effective as possible, except for the tetrahexyl decaloscorbate. That is my weakness. It's such a fantastic ingredient. But I did want to make sure that these were drugstore prices and hopefully affordable to as many people as possible, because that really is the aim with this channel, is to ensure that I'm empowering our skin of color family to make sure we really do have the best skin of our lives. Please do write down below your questions about the Dr. Vanita Rattan range. I am in the comment section for 1 hour at the launch of every single video. Please ask me any other questions you want to ask about your skincare too. Please follow me on Instagram, which is Skincare by Dr. V and Dr. Vanita Rattan. Also TikTok, which is Dr. Vanita Rattan. And you can download your free guide for skincare for skin of color down below too. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.